I don't think we can fully comprehend unless we really put ourselves in their shoes.
This was definitely a unique commission, and I went after it.
There's very few people who have produced the kind of material that he has.
Today on Spotlight, inside a Robin Williams biography about his life, career, and more. Plus, a new local thought-provoking exhibit from 3 female artists. And then BioSTL gets a $1.5 million grant to open the Center for Defense Medicine. But first, a sculptor whose latest piece was created for one of the city's oldest legal institutions. It's Sunday, and you're watching Spotlight.
There were people escaping, wanting to be free. There's a sophistication. There was a process involved, which was the legal system.
Judges in the 22nd Judicial Circuit voted to create a memorial commemorating enslaved blacks and white lawyers who worked together in the fight for freedom. 60 years before the Civil War, Missouri law allowed slaves to sue for the civil right to be free. 300 enslaved people stood in a court of law and sued for their freedom. These are called the freedom suits.
I was definitely driven by the excitement, and mainly the strength of the subject. That was the main thing, the concept.
Preston Jackson was commissioned to create the memorial statue. It will pay tribute to the brave men and women who stood against their oppressors.
It was so direct from the steps of where they were auctioned or sold into the courthouses where they sat and listened and were defended. So this was definitely a unique commission, and I went after it.
Jackson is a master artist. He's professor emeritus at the School of the Art Institute in Chicago. His studio and art gallery is located in Peoria, Illinois. Jackson is regarded as a storyteller, and his body of work reflects a series of stories. The Freedom Suit statue is just another example of his unique ability. This maquette gives a modest preview of what's to come.
I had to decide whether it was an interior scene or an exterior scene, and that was a very important element. Then I had to make it more personal. Who were some of the people? Well, of all genders, definitely African people from different tribes and places. I wanted to reflect that, and levels of education. So I was looking for the all-inclusive door to go through. Interiors versus exteriors, scenes that happened when they were marched off down to the river, loaded onto boats, and where they were kept before even the trials themselves, in jailhouses and inadequate facilities. So it's like drawing on a canvas. But the canvases, multiple canvases, had to pick up light in a certain way. Something that would excite you and change as the day changed, with the sun moving across the sky.
The designated site for the memorial is the East Plaza of the Civil Courts building.
The actual sculpture itself may be 14.5 to 15 feet tall. Then I'm going to require that it be placed on a 5-foot stone structure, and that will take it up to about 20 feet. This will be my best piece. I say that about a lot of pieces, but this is definitely because of the scale of the piece and located in a place that's hot with culture, hot with spiritual stuff.
Jackson has a personal connection to this memorial. Like the Freedom Suits plaintiffs who fought for equality, as a black man, he has experienced his own struggles.
Black artists don't get very many commissions. And galleries, that's another situation that I divorced. The whole idea of being accepted in galleries. Now here I am, at this age, teaching at the best school in the world, my own department, my own this, and kicking butt all the way, Yet I cannot get a gallery. Yet I cannot get representation. Yet I am pushed out of competition. And it's so obvious why. Sometimes right in my face, sometimes told. And this is like, up until the years 2000. And that's why I opened my own gallery.
Regardless of his personal struggles and those of the Freedom Suits litigants, Jackson wants this statute to reinforce a positive message.
I have a choice whether to emphasize the activity, because we know it's negative. It's negative, and there's nothing beautiful about this. But the beauty lies within the sharing of the information, the sharing and telling the truth. Beauty is in truth. Truth is in beauty. So the beauty is in there's someone who cares about you, someone from the white culture that cared about someone from the black culture. That's the beauty of it.
For an in-depth look at the Freedom Suits, here's an excerpt from HEC Media's exclusive documentary, Seeking Freedom.
Buried within these delicate documents lies an incredible story of courage and fortitude. A history hidden for nearly 200 years, discovered among the archives of the St. Louis Civil Courts building. These legal papers give us an amazing insight into St. Louis's lifestyle decades before the Civil War, when keeping slaves was customary. While many of us believe a slave's only path to freedom was to run away or be granted freedom by their owner, these documents tell us something different. Hundreds of brave black men and women defied their owners and put their faith and fates in the law of the land. Taking their owners to court, they were seeking freedom.
The place to begin with the quest for freedom is 1769, when a Spanish governor decreed that no Indians be held in slavery in the territory.
There is a law written by the Assembly, the Territorial Assembly, that says you can sue for your freedom, and you can sue for your freedom as a poor person, which means that you don't have to put up a bond, which means that an attorney shall be appointed for you. And that law continues in one form or another up through the Civil War.
The stakes were high, and the process was not easy. Taking your owner to court could be a life-threatening decision. If the master found out or jurors ruled against you and your case was lost, it meant the possibility of having to go back to your owner, and most likely a life of misery or death.
If your owner challenged this, you would be treated harshly, violently during the period of litigation. You might be sold into slavery before the case could get to court.
While slaves could sue their masters, it was illegal for them to testify on their own behalf. Their fate was left in the hands of white witnesses, white attorneys, judges, and all-white juries who most likely owned slaves themselves.
Petitioning for freedom, bringing a freedom suit was a bold move, because it required the wherewithal in terms of stamina and commitment and the lack of fear to pursue one's freedom. These slaves who were going to court to petition for their freedom were really taking great risks, not the least of which is putting faith in a legal system that itself has legalized the very institution from which they are seeking liberation.
In the late 1840s, around the time the Dred Scott case was first filed in St. Louis, things worsened for slaves in Missouri. Slave owners felt under siege by increased pressure from free blacks and abolitionists. They were taunted by the liberties they perceived African Americans to have gained. So changes were made to bring things back under their control. These changes, along with the state law passed in 1845 requiring slaves suing for their freedom to put up a bond to pay court costs if they lost, which many could not afford to do, drastically curtailed the number of freedom suits filed. Then, in 1857, the United States Supreme Court overturned the most notorious freedom suit, the Dred Scott case. The High Court ruled that people of African descent, whether free or not, did not have the rights of citizens, which of course included the right to sue.
These cases in Missouri are part and parcel of the rising sectional tension that eventually led to the Civil War. They're absolutely essential to that. Dred Scott is, of course, the most famous example of that, but that is merely part of a larger chain of lawsuits that raise tensions between free states and slave states.
I think we can learn from reading these cases about the indelible spirit of people that are seeking freedom. I think the risks that these people took, that these slaves took, was huge, and I don't think we can fully comprehend what was at stake unless we really put ourselves in their shoes.
When we read the cases, we are transported back to a time of unimaginable hatred and a fledgling and misguided legal system. The cases also give us an opportunity to witness the hope, courage, and character of people bold enough to risk everything they had, including their lives, to march into court seeking freedom.
To watch this full exclusive documentary, visit hecmedia.org.
HEC Films. Explore, inspire, educate, and entertain. HEC Films, just one of the many facets of award-winning content you'll find at hecmedia.org.
Good morning, Vietnam! Hey, this is not a test. This is rock and roll. 0600. What's the O stand for? Oh, my God, it's early.
The comic genius of Robin Williams.
Oh, my God, it's clotted. Oh, God.
Some of the best lines from his films he ad-libbed, including this one from Mrs. Doubtfire.
Look at this. My first day as a woman, I'm getting hot flashes.
His delivery was so rapid fire and seemingly spur of the moment.
Yes, he was great at improvisation. He was a great ad-libber, but not everything was sort of made up in the moment. He did a lot of preparation to seem, that spontaneous.
These are just some of the handwritten script notes New York Times reporter Dave Itzkoff studied to come to that conclusion. He spent years going over Williams' archived papers, letters, and screenplays, as well as interviewing Williams' son Zach and dear friend Billy Crystal, all for his New York Times best-selling biography, Robin. Despite all of that research, the heart of the book is what Itzkoff observed of Williams face-to-face during interviews in 2008 and 2009.
You could have a conversation with him, and his sort of natural mode was much more even, and his voice was very serene and quiet, and he was pretty, intellectual, although he also had these very kind of, he was really into pop culture and low culture and comic books and action figures, and we bonded over that. So, I think it was that sort of arrested adolescent in him.
The son of a Ford executive father and socialite mother, Robin Williams had a posh yet lonely Midwestern childhood before moving to the San Francisco area for high school.
His dad's sort of great aspiration when Robin first went off to college was that Robin was going to grow up to be a diplomat, and I can't imagine a world where Robin Williams ended up as a diplomat and not, a comedian and an actor.
Williams would study at Juilliard with Christopher Reeve. At the age of 27, take on an unforgettable television role, and ultimately go on to make 69 movies, in addition to stand-up shows and comedy specials, all before his death at age 63. But all those successes were never able to wipe away feelings of self-doubt.
You can see it in his material, in his comedy routines, and in some of his performances, this concern about, maybe I'm successful now in my 20s and 30s, but what might happen in my 60s if my fan base lost interest in me, if they moved on to other people, if my own health started to go and I couldn't be this kind of rapid-fire person anymore, what would that be like?
His life, career, and even his suicide in 2014 were complicated in ways many of his fans didn't even know.
You write in your book that, the paradox of a man who is both wildly outgoing and painfully introverted. after all the research that you did, after all the interviews that you did, what do you think about Robin Williams and his legacy?
I think what you described, I think that's kind of, who he is and who he remains. That I think he is really a singular talent, and, his body of work. There's very few people who, certainly in American culture and even in, the wider, film culture and comedy culture that have produced the kind of material that he has. And I think a lot of it is going to endure. But he's still kind of an enigma. I think that, you still watch what he did, and if you can think about it at all in relationship to what we know about who he was off stage and off camera, and it's still kind of hard to hold in your mind those two people, that he could do both of those things and was both of those people.
Text Robin to 31996 to watch the full interview and find out why Itzkoff's conversation with Billy Crystal surprised him the most. You can also download our Talking with Authors podcast.
HEC Media presents Talking with Authors, the podcast. Your favorite writers and genres, with diverse subjects and styles, with new podcasts dropping bi-weekly. Subscribe to Talking with Authors wherever you get your podcasts.
We are here at Gallery 210 on the campus of the University of Missouri at St. Louis for the exhibition Exposure 21. Exposure 21, like all the previous exposure exhibitions, are based around local St. Louis area artists and have a thematic notion connecting them. In this case, the notion is 3 myths, and it is featuring the work of 3 women whose work addresses in some way the myths that society has placed upon them in one context, with the exception of one artist whose work is a cautionary tale about climate change. Lola Abgera is a Chicago-born artist who finished her Master's of Fine Arts at Washington University this year. Her work deals specifically with the myths surrounding black female sexuality and the myths that surround them in popular culture. Works such as the Devouring Binds, made of ceramic and rope, shows the notions of restraints as the ropes interweave through this large ceramic sculpture. Julie Curran is a St. Louis artist who is primarily known as a printmaker. She is a colleague and a protege of some sort for Tom Huck. Her work deals specifically with the idea of male toxicity and features bodies of work. Some are representative of altarpieces, combining her printmaking technique with, I think, formidable painting skills. And Emma Vidal is from Paris. She now resides in St. Louis. She has created this entire myth about the Lost Boys. We don't exactly know what preceded the Lost Boys, but some kind of catastrophe has made a new culture start to emerge. Her ceramic pieces are just truly amazing. The detail, the work that goes into those as these figures are adorning themselves with these various objects are just hauntingly beautiful. The artists in our area are really second to none, and by coming out here and experiencing the work firsthand, you can see for yourself the high caliber of artists these artists present to us, and that's reflective of all the artists in our community. For more information about Exposure 21, please visit the Gallery 210 website at gallery210.umsl.edu. And because of COVID, appointments and masks are necessary for your visits.
Paying tribute to frontline workers through music. Later on Spotlight.
Gateway Biotechnology is developing drugs for noise-induced hearing loss and a debilitating condition called tinnitus, commonly referred to as ringing in the ears. The Washington University School of Medicine academic spinoff launched at BioGenerator, the investment arm of BioSTL.
The whole idea is to drive business through this lab and then ultimately from there, with the help of other venture capitalists, out into the marketplace.
Harry Aurator is the Director of Entrepreneur Development at BioGenerator. Kalocyte is another WashU academic spinoff that launched at BioGenerator. This company is developing artificial red blood cells, which is critical for a life-saving alternative to a blood transfusion after traumatic injuries before patients arrive to a hospital. The pursuit of drugs to combat hearing loss and the pursuit for artificial blood gained considerable interest from the U.S. military and millions in grants. Kalosite received funding from the U.S. Department of Defense, and recently Gateway Biotechnology received funding from the Department of the Army.
$10 million grant. WashU is the primary lead on that grant because it involves surgery.
Recent achievements by startups have paved the way for a new not-for-profit program. BioGenerator launched the Center for Defense Medicine with a grant from the U.S. Economic Development Administration.
We've won $1.5 million over the next 3 years from the federal government, to be matched by $1.8 million at least from the local community. And so that's a minimum of $3.3 million that we'll have to spend over the next 3 years.
Program funding will help startups develop innovative solutions to meet the needs of U.S. military and security forces. A Raider says he's leveraging the city's strengths as a global center for bioscience research. He says St. Louis has a wealth of military-relevant medical technologies.
So the role of the Center for Defense Medicine is to provide advice to academics and to early stage companies so they can begin to crack that culture and begin to develop those relationships with potential champions inside the Department of Defense. They actually have their own medical needs, obviously, since they're putting soldiers in harm's way. And so they have their own programs where they like to fund projects that will serve the needs of the warfighter, and they'll actually eventually become a customer, right? So they actually take a different approach. It's not just driven by the science. They really know that they're working with a company and a community that can, meet all the needs of ultimately being a supplier.
He says advisors for the center will help attract and build companies that can support defense-related innovation.
So those advisors are able to work with our companies to help them acculturate and to build those relationships. They know who to call. They know who would be interested in a topic. They can provide those introductions. They can also tell us which ideas will be responsive or to the military's problems and which ones really aren't. So they'll help us prioritize technology and decide which grants to support and which ones not to. And then they'll help us, build those relationships that are so crucial to success within the DoD.
We have monthly phone calls with the Army, and we start to hear what's really interesting for them. They really want a therapy. They want something that they can deliver in the battlefield when a soldier suffers some acute trauma to the ear, a blast, a gunshot, whatever it is. They want a therapy that they could deliver immediately to that soldier to help prevent any additional damage to hearing.
And for Kalosite, developing artificial red blood cell technology to treat blood loss in the battlefield received considerable support, but that was before the Center of Defense Medicine. Kalosite relocated to Baltimore. A Raider says the center will help keep companies in St. Louis.
That I was just determined that we weren't going to lose another great company. And that's one of the reasons why I created the center, so that we could, give people a much stronger argument for remaining in St. Louis.
Follow HEC Media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thank you for all the gifts you share.
next week, a memoir tackling football culture that's both character building and dangerous. Plus, how you can build a video game thanks to a program created in St. Louis. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.